beautifuls. This is Manna Reads. Welcome. If this is the first time you're finding my channel, welcome. If you're one of my returning subscribers, well, welcome back. So last time I done a recap video of chapters of the prologue from and then till chapter 4. So now we're on chapter 5. So we're gonna find out what the bandaged boy has wrong with him. And why Lian basically, just went in a daze, right? Because, we don't know, but we're going to find out. So, if you haven't got up to chapter 5 just yet, I have a playlist where you're going to find the prologue to chapter 4 all together. So, it's really easy. So, if you can, want to skip through, or if you want to, just catch up, then you could go ahead and go back to one of those videos and just watch the parts that you missed. It's pretty easy. I'm making it very easy. But anyway, we're just going to go ahead and go on. This chapter is Red Clad Ghost, the burning of martial and civil temples. So, we're just going to go on. We're just going to continue. On the face of the boy, as Lian had first suspected, there was a field of serious burn scars. Except beneath the bloody scars, there were traces of 3 or 4 tiny faces. These faces were no bigger than the palm of a baby, and they were scattered crookedly across his cheeks and forehead. After being burned, the features on each tiny face were shriveled in pain, as if screaming in agony. The sight of these weird screaming faces squeezing and squirming on a regular human face was indeed more horrifying than any demon. Lian felt as though he were plunged into a nightmare the instant he saw the boy's face. A fear so immense paralyzed him until he couldn't recall standing up, nor tell what the expression on his face was, but it must have been intimidating. The boy was already on tenterhooks when he removed his bandages at that hesitant, slow pace. After seeing Lian's reaction, he took a couple of steps back, as if aware of Lian's inability to accept the face of his. He suddenly covered his horrifying face and leapt up from the ground, then let out a shout and fled into the deep woods. Lian finally came round and shouted, "Wait!" He called out as he chased after him. "Wait, come back!" But Lian had been dumbstruck for a good moment before he came round. The boy was obviously familiar with the mountain pass and used to escaping in the dark, so it took him no time to vanish completely. No matter how Lian yelled for him, he wouldn't show himself. There was no one around to help Lian search, and his powers had been exhausted by now, so there was no way he could contact the others through the array. He ran all over the mountain, searching for a good part of an hour to no avail. So this is what he looks like. This is that picture here. You can't really see the faces though. But they're there. That must have been terrible. Imagine you're a boy and you're playing in a field or whatever, and then all of a sudden you get hit with this terrible disease and you don't know what's wrong, and you look terrible, right? It just scars your face for life, and apparently you just can't get rid of them, so it's just they're there forever. That must have been terrible. That must have been horrifying. A cold breeze blew past and cleared his mind a little, knowing that running around aimlessly like a headless fly served no purpose. Lian forced himself to calm down. Maybe he'll go back to take Yao Ying's body, Lian thought as he returned to the Mount Yang temple. But then he stopped in his tracks. Many men dressed in black with grave expressions had gathered in the woods at the back of the temple, and they were in the midst of carefully unloading those 40-something upside-down corpses. A tall man with folded arms was standing before the woods, overseeing the operation. When he turned his head around, it was an exquisite yet old face of a youth. It was Fu Yao. He looked like he had made a trip back and brought a number of helping hands along from the palace of Wanyan. Zilan was about to speak, but was interrupted by the sound of footfalls behind him. Nanfang had returned from sending the villagers away. Upon seeing the situation at hand, Nanfang glanced at Fu Yao and said, "Didn't you run away?" The comment was not pleasant to the ears, and Fu Yao raised his eyebrows in displeasure. That's me trying to raise my eyebrows. Or an eyebrow. How does the rock do it? God damn. Okay, whatever. It's fine. Zilan didn't want them to start another argument at a time like this. So he said, "I asked him to find reinforcements." Nanfang sneered. "Well, where are they? I thought you could at least ask your general to come personally." Fu Ya replied coldly. "When I went back, I heard General Pei Jr. had already come to the scene. So I didn't bother our general. Even if I had, he'd probably been too busy to come anyway." Actually, based on Zilan's understanding of Mu Ying, Zilan was pretty sure that he wouldn't have come, even if he had the time. But under the present circumstances, there wasn't time to dwell on that. He said tiredly, "Stop your fighting for a moment and help me find the bandaged boy." Nanfang frowned. "Wasn't he guarding that girl's body with you earlier?" "I scared him off after asking him to remove his bandages," Zilan replied. Fu Yao smirked. "Please, your cross-dressing isn't that terrifying." Zilan sighed. "It's my fault for being in a stupor. Miss Yao Ying's death was already a big shock to him. He probably couldn't take the blow of thinking that I was scared off from his face, so he ran off." Fu Ya wrinkled his nose. "Is he really that ugly?" "It's not a matter of ugliness," Zilan replied. He has human face disease." Hearing those 3 words, both Nanfang and Fu Yao froze. They finally understood why Zilan was shocked. 800 years ago, a plague swept through the kingdom of Zanli, and it wiped out the nation. Those who caught the plague would first develop small warts all over their bodies. Then, as the warts swelled, the skin would grow rough. The swollen parts would slowly grow more uneven, with 3 indentations and 1 protrusion, just like eyes, mouth, noses. The facial features would then metamorphosize until the warts eventually took on the shape of a human face. If they were left alone, more and more human faces would grow on their bodies. It was said that some of these human faces, once fully formed, could speak and even scream. They called this the human face disease. Fu Yao's expression went through a myriad of changes. He dropped his folded arms. "That's impossible. It was exterminated hundreds of years ago. There's no way it could reappear." "I'm not mistaken," Zilan only said. Nanfang and Fu Yao couldn't refute him. No one could refute him if this came from Zilan. Zilan continued. "There are many burn scars on his face, probably from self-inflicted burns, trying to get rid of the faces. The first reaction of those who contracted the disease was usually to slice off the faces with knives or burn them away with fire. They would use any means possible to rid themselves of those lesions." Nanfang's voice turned solemn. "The boy is probably not a normal human, then. He has to be at least a few hundred years old. All aside, is he contagious?" Even though this was a severe headache, it was a question Zilan considered calmly and logically. So he replied with conviction, "No. The human face disease is highly contagious. If he were still contagious, then the entire mountain would have been infected by now. Considering how long he's been hiding here, his condition should already be cured. Only the scars remain." They couldn't afford to be careless. Fu Yao seemed to have some real influence in the palace of Wanyan, and was able to call forth capable hands to help with the search. But no matter how deep they dug or how far they looked, they could not find any traces of the bandaged boy. Perhaps he had already fled Mount Lian and vanished into the sea of people. The best he could do now was to return to the heavens, request at the palace of Lin Wen, conduct a search, and wait for news. Fortunately, the boy was not contagious, but Zilan thought of how horrifying he looked. If he was discovered after he left the mountains, he might end up being hunted as a monster. It was best that they find him soon. Without further delay, Zilan picked up Yao Ying's body and descended the mountain. Since he was slightly out of it, he didn't realize he brought the body into the tea shop until the tea master yelled at him. Zilan immediately apologized and went back out to entrust Yao Ying's burial to someone else before re-entering the tea shop. After settling everything, he sat down and heaved a soundless sigh. The case was finally over, but Zilan thought that the few days since he ascended felt longer than the entire year of collecting scraps in the mortal realm. Climbing, jumping, flying, screaming, tumbling, disguising, and performing, his bones were going to collapse. Even then, there were still many mysteries and aftermaths left for him to deal with. Maybe he'd raise a barred banner and roam the world telling tales of how collecting scraps was better than ascension. I mean, poor Zilan. He gets to heaven, gets his first job, has to deal with a wraith, has to deal with, trying to find out, what's going on. I mean, he did find out what was going on with the brides, and then, he has two arguing juniors. And now he has this boy who has this mysterious disease. I guess it's not that mysterious, but it's like a plague. I'm trying to figure that out. And so there's a lot that Zilan has to deal with. And he's literally just been ascended by a day about that point. Poor Zilan. It's not easy being a god, right? For other ways, it's not easy to be a god. You should subscribe to my channel so you can learn more about how not easy it is to be a god. I would appreciate it. Fu Yao lifted the hem of his robe and sat down next to him. Alas, he could no longer keep it in and rolled his eyes. How much longer are you going to wear that thing? It felt incredibly endearing somehow to see his eyes roll. Zilan finally took off the wedding dress, wiped away his makeup, and then realized dejectedly, was I talking to General Pei Jr. in this dress the whole time? Nanfang, why didn't you remind me? Probably because you look so obviously happy in it, Fu Yao replied. After running errands all day, Nanfang finally sat down for a rest too. Don't worry about it. General Pei Jr. won't care. You can dress 10 times weirder, and he wouldn't tell anyone when he goes back. Zilan was grateful for all the errands this junior official had run and poured him some tea. He thought about how cool-headed General Pei Jr. was in the face of Wang Yi's madness and commented, General Pei Jr. is certainly calm and collected, very composed. Nanfang took a sip of tea and said, he may look well-mannered, but he's like his ancestor, difficult to deal with. That was something Zilan could of course see. Unbelievably enough, Fu Yao agreed to. General Pei Jr. is a Nouveau ascendant of the last couple 100 years. But he has got strong tailwind and climbs the ladder pretty fast. When he was appointed Deputy General by General Pei, he was barely 20 years old. Do you know what he did? What? Zilan asked. He slaughtered an entire city. Fu Yao replied coldly. Zilan looked thoughtful on hearing this, but he wasn't surprised. In the upper court, kings and generals roamed, regarding fighting for and protecting one's land. It was said that the success of a general is built on the bones of millions. To reach godhood, one must first become a hero, but the path a hero walked was always bloody. Fu Yao concluded, in the upper court, there aren't many who are trustworthy and worth meeting. Zilan thought it was funny that Fu Yao sounded like he was speaking from experience and cautioning a newcomer. He wondered if Fu Yao only spoke because he had been bullied in the heavenly realm himself, and the experience had affected him deeply. But then again, even though Zilan had ascended 3 times, he never stuck around for long. So when it comes to understanding the gods, he might actually know less than 2 junior officials. Sounds like Zilan was kind of a loner. Like even when the first time, right? He didn't sound like he stuck around. Like he maybe didn't actually want to be a god. You know? I mean, once he like got there and he saw it, maybe he was just like, maybe this isn't for me. But I guess you can't really do anything if you're already a god, right? You're just a god. Nanfang, on the other hand, seemed to strongly disagree. Don't listen to such inflammatory statements. There's good and bad everywhere. There's still a number of trustworthy officials in the heavens. Trustworthy officials? You mean your general? Fu Yao sneered. Nanfang responded, I don't know about my general, but definitely not yours. Zilan was long used to this kind of situation, and with other things on his mind, he didn't have the energy to pull them apart. The case in the north had concluded. The first thing Zilan did upon returning to the heavens was to report the bandaged boy to the palace of Lin Wen. Place a request to search for him. Lin Wen took the request with a grave expression. I will do my utmost to find him. Truly, I did not think this journey to the north would open such a giant can of worms. Thank you for your hard work, Your Highness. Zilan replied, I have 2 junior officials who volunteered to help, to thank, and General Pei Jr. as well. I am sincerely grateful. This all came from the relationship trouble caused by old Pei himself, so of course Junior has to take care of it. He's used to it, so there's no need to thank him. Lin Wen said, If Your Highness is not busy, please enter the communication array. We are to have a meeting regarding what transpired. Zilan also had many questions he'd like answers to. After leaving the palace of Lin Wen, he wandered around and found a small stone bridge. The stone bridge crossed a small gurgling stream with crystal clear waters. He could see the clouds drifting under the water, and through the flowing waters and clouds there stood a rising and falling mountain range, as well as a vast, squarely erected city of the mortal realm. That sounds really nice. It's a nice view. This is a good place, Zilan thought. See? Zilan agrees with me. Of course. And so he sat on the head of the bridge, mouthed the password, and entered the communication array. It was one of those rare times when the communication array was bursting with liveliness, with voices echoing and reverberating through in all directions. The first thing he heard was Fenyin swearing. Holy fuck! Have you all picked a mountain for the sailing yet? I think that Wani is a madwoman. No wonder what we asked. She only screams to see General Pei and tells us nothing useful about the location of the Green Ghost Kirong. General Pei Jr. responded. General Wani has always been stubborn and intense. Fenyin yelled angrily. General Pei Jr., is your General Pei back yet? Let her meet him. Then get the Green Ghost Kirong's location out of her and get rid of her. Fenyin had never been good with women, and Zilan felt sorry that he was the one given the task of interrogation. General Pei Jr. replied, It doesn't matter even if they meet. She'll just become more insane. A voice came through. Another round of upside-down corpses. Kirong really is too crass. Disgusting. Can you imagine if they're all, like, in heaven? And they're all just sitting, like, standing there, just casually talking about dead bodies. Rude. Even the ghost realm thinks he's vulgar. That means he truly is very much so. Words between the officials flew seemingly around in the array, and it was clear that they were all on familiar terms with one another. As a newcomer who just ascended, again after 800-year absence, Zilan should have laid low and remained silent. But after a while, he couldn't resist and asked, Everyone, Was what was with the upside down corpses? Was Green Ghost Key wrong in the area too? Zilan rarely spoke in the communication array, so his voice was foreign to many, and the officials did not know whether to respond. Surprisingly enough, the first to answer was Fen Yin. Gringo's Kirong wasn't at Mount Nguyen. However, the upside-down corpses were offerings Wan Yi presented to him, as per his order. Wan Yi is a subordinate of the Green Ghosts, Zilan asked. Correct, General Pei Jr. replied. Wan Yi passed away many hundreds of years ago. She held a grudge but was too powerless to stir up havoc until just over 100 years ago. When Green Ghost Kirong took a liking to her and took her under his wing. Only then did her spiritual powers improve by leaps and bounds. What he really meant was that the chaos Wan Yi caused was not General Pei's fault, because she wasn't originally this strong. All the blame should go to Green Ghost Kirong. Instead, since he was the one who took her under his command and gave her the power to cause harm. Everyone was already of the opinion that this sin was all General Pei's to bear, though no one said it out loud. Yet he noticed, and spoke of it so openly in this reminder that it shut everyone up and made them hide their real thoughts deeper within. Zilan then spoke up again. Has Mount Union been thoroughly inspected? What about the child spirit? This time Mu Ying's voice rang out. He said in an inscrutable tone, Child spirit? What child spirit? Zilan realized Fu Yao must have not reported every detail. Maybe his volunteering to help, even done in secret. So without mentioning Fu Yao, to spare him any unnecessary problems, Zilan explained, When I was in the wedding sedan, I heard the giggles of a child who sang nursery rhymes as a word of caution. The two general officials next to me didn't notice, which means that this child spirit must have remarkable powers. There was no child spirit found on Mount Yuyin, Mu Ying stated. Zilan was confused. Perhaps the child spirit had come specifically just to warn him. Thinking of this, Zilan was suddenly reminded of another matter that had been on his mind all this time. He asked, Speaking of which, I met a young man who could control silver butterflies at Mount Yuyin. Does anyone know who he is? The noisy communication array suddenly fell completely silent. Zilan was expecting this reaction, so he simply waited patiently. A moment later, Lin Wen asked, Your Highness, what did you say just now? Mu Ying said coldly. He said that he had met Hua Chen. Upon finally learning the name of that young man in red, Zilan felt his spirits lift inexplicably. He smiled. So he's called Hua Chen. It's a fitting name for him. The tone of Zilan's voice rendered all the officials even more speechless. Another moment passed before Lin Wen cleared her throat. Your Highness, have you ever heard of the 4 calamities? Much ashamed. I only know of the 4 famous tales, Zilan thought to himself. The so-called 4 famous tales referred to the extravagant stories of the deeds of 4 gods prior to their ascension. The young lord who poured wine, the prince who pleased God, the general who snapped his sword, and the princess who slit her throat. Of course, the prince who pleased God alluded to an awe-inspiring display of the crown prince of Zanli upon the grand avenue of divine might. Having one's name among the famous 4 tales does not necessarily indicate that those 4 were the strongest of the gods. The 4 famous tales were simply because they were the most well-known and most spoken of. Zilan had always been slow on the uptake when it came from news from the outside world. He could even said to be out of touch with the outside world and ignorant of its affairs. He only knew about the 4 famous tales because he was one of the 4. The 4 calamities was probably something that grew popular later, but Zilan had never heard of the term before, so he included the word calamity. It couldn't be anything good. Much ashamed, I've never heard of them, Zilan said. What are the 4 calamities? Mu Ying responded coldly. Your Highness walked the mortal realm for hundreds of years, and yet you are still so ill-informed. I'm really curious to know what you've been doing all this time. Eating, sleeping, busking, collecting junk. Duh. I kind of wish Lian had said this out loud, to be real. Lian smiled. It's not easy being immortal. There are plenty of things to busy myself with. They're all complicated. It's not easier than being a heavenly official. Please remember well, Your Highness, Lian said. The four calamities are ship sinking black water, night touring green lantern, white cloth calamity, and crimson rain sought flower. They are the four ghost kings of the ghost realm who cause endless headaches for all in the heavenly realm. Humans become gods when they ascend, ghosts when they fall. The gods created heaven to reside in, drawing a clear boundary between themselves and mortals. They watched from above and ruled from beyond reach. The ghost realm, on the other hand, was not separated from the mortal realm. Monsters, demons, ghosts, and mortals all shared one earth. Some ghosts hid in the darkness, and some pretended to be humans, as they walked among the people and roamed the mortal realm in disguise. Lian continued. Ship sinking black water refers to a water ghost. Although he has reached supreme status, he is fairly low-key and rarely starts trouble. Not many have seen him before, so we will mind him for now. Night touring green lantern refers to that vulgar, cult-hanging green ghost Kirong. He is the only one of the four not yet a supreme. He is likely included because he always is causing trouble and is really quite annoying. Or maybe because four names are easier to remember, so he's just there to pad the numbers. We'll skip him too. White Cloth Calamity should be someone Your Highness is familiar with. He is also known as White No-Face. Hearing the name, Lian, who was sitting on the stone bridge, suddenly felt a stab of pain in his heart, spread all over his body. His hands began to shake, and he unconsciously clenched them into fists. Of course he was familiar. They say that when a supreme is born, it can destroy an entire nation and throw the world into chaos. The first country White No-Face destroyed was Zanli. Lian remained silent, and Lian continued. In any case, White No-Face is already defeated. Even if he still exists somewhere in the world, he is now past his time in the limelight. Your Highness, the silver butterflies you saw on Mount Union are also called wraith butterflies. Their master is the last of the four, and the one the world does not want to incur the wrath of. Crimson rain sought flower Hua Cheng. Turn the page. In the heavens, notorious was the word to describe the heavenly emperor and the crown princess Zenli. Although the meaning notoriety was completely different between the two, the word still resonated equally. However, in the ghost realm, there is only one worthy of being called notorious, and that was Hua Chen. If you wanted to learn about a god, simply walk into his temple and take a look at the way he was dressed and the weapons he wielded, and you'd more or less understand him. If you wanted to know more, simply listen to folk tales, plays, and stories passed down by word of mouth. A god's mortal past and deeds were all well documented. Ghosts, on the other hand, not so much. The kind of person they were while still alive, and their appearance at present were all a mystery. And then the name Hua Chen was obviously fake, and his appearance was most likely fake too. In the rumors, he was sometimes a twisted boy given to capricious mood changes, sometimes a gentle and well-mannered, handsome young man, sometimes a gorgeous seductress with a venomous heart. Anything goes. As for his true self, the only thing that one could be sure of was that he was dressed in red, and often appeared alongside a bloodbath with silver butterflies flitting in between his sleeves. And when it came to Hua Chen's backstory, there were endless different versions. Some say he was born without a right eye and was bullied and humiliated for it since birth. So he was filled with hatred for the world. Some say he was a young soldier who died in a lost battle for his country and later came to walk the earth in resentment. Some say he was a fool who was tormented by the death of his love. Some even say he was a monster. In the most outrageous version, supposedly, only supposedly, Cheng ascended and became a god, but immediately jumped back down on his own and became a ghost. But that version wasn't widespread. No one knew if it was true or false, and not many believed it. It had to be false, though. Even if it were true, it'd be a complete embarrassment for the heavens if someone ditched a heavenly official role to become a ghost. Either way, the more diverse the stories were, the more mystery he was shrouded in. There were also many reasons for the gods to fear Chen. For example, his behavior was unpredictable. Sometimes he would carry out a massacre in cold blood, and sometimes he would do odd acts of kindness. He also wielded a great deal of influence in the mortal realm and had legions of followers. So we're going to leave it there because I think that's a good place to leave off from since we've found out who Chen kind of is. I mean, although, we don't really, this is all like hundreds of accounts later, we don't really know what he's about. We don't know anything real about him. These are just stories and legends that have been passed down. So if you're wondering what the name Hua Chan means, there's a footnote and it means flower city. Obviously a fake name. I don't know. Everyone seems to be very scared of Hua Chan. Maybe because he's scary. I don't know. We don't know yet why people are scared of Hua Chan, but I guess we'll find out in part 2 why they're scared of him or why he's so terrifying. So that was an interesting chapter. I'm wondering, what kind of things Lian did while he was the crown prince in Li. And then, because obviously there was a lot of things that we don't know. There's a lot of things that apparently Lian doesn't remember. I don't know if that was on purpose. I don't know if things were too traumatic. And then, he chose to forget. Because actually, I'm not a psychologist and I don't know the real psychological term for this. But your brain does this thing when it goes through lots of trauma where it'll forget. Like, you'll lose your memories because, your brain doesn't want you to remember all the hurtful things. So then you just kind of lose your memory that way. I know there's a technical term for this. I don't know, obviously. But, that may have happened to Lian, right? Because there's a lot of things that he doesn't know that you think that he should know. Like he didn't remember Mu Ying. That was one of his closest allies, like in the mortal realm. I don't know if they were friends at one point. We'll find out, maybe. I don't know. So I feel like there's a lot of things that we still don't know about either of them. And then we're going to find out a bit later on. But yeah, what do you guys think of the novel so far? Are you guys enjoying it? Are you guys, nervous about what's going to happen to Lian? No spoilers if you do know, just so that way people that have been following along with the books, don't get, spoiled. But yeah, what do y'all think of the novel so far? Are you guys enjoying it? Are you guys having a good time? Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed chapter 5. We're going to be doing part 2 next week. Just look for... So there's a couple of things that are happening on Friday. I was going to be doing fantasy novels next, but I've decided that I wanted to do something a bit more different. So instead, I'm going to be kind of talking about this new show that's on Gaga called La Cuisine, because I think more people should watch it. And then and then on Saturday, I'm going to be having 2 live streams this week. Hopefully that doesn't kill me. So I'll be live streaming from 12 p.m. to 1. So I'll be playing Dream Daddy. And also, I'll be, since it's the last episode of You're My Sky. I definitely want to talk about it and get people's thoughts and see, how the finale went, if everything went how they expected. And then later on at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, I'm going to be live streaming with Natalia Soju Nights, and we're going to be ranking BLCP, so like couples. So that's going to be at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. And then the live stream is also from the Dream Daddy is 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So hopefully you can join me for all those things. As usual, I hope you enjoyed the video. And all the things that you can do to support me will be down below. I hope you like, subscribe, and click that bell so you don't miss any more stories if you enjoyed them. And I will see you all next time. Bye. I can never find my mouse. Where did it go?